Hi, my name is Ethan.
I'm Pam.
I'm Samson. I'm Xavier.
And I'm Julia.
I'm Kim.
I'm Gloria.
And
we are the 99.
99. 99. 99.
99.
99.
99.
Hello, everyone. My name is Payne.
My name is Keon.
And my name is Gloria.
And we are the 99. So we are called the 99 because we're a group of Hmong Christians who want to be able to just encourage other believers who might have the same experience or something similar to encourage you guys and maybe talk about topics that aren't really talked about in church. So today, our episode, this one, I feel like honestly, it's been a topic that we should be talking about. And we're going to be talking about mental health and faith and what it's like being a Hmong youth or a Hmong young person who's navigating both, right? Both mental health and also their faith. And also I feel like mental health isn't something that we really talk about in church because it could be kind of like a taboo kind of topic, but it does affect a lot of us. I think we all go through it. So today we're going to be opening up with that conversation. Personally, I feel like growing up in church, like I said, we are taught that church, it's supposed to be a place where we're able to find peace or we're able to, rest or find that healing. And we're also told to basically leave our burdens at the cross. And that's also one of the saying I always talk about too is like leaving your burden at the foot of the cross. But I feel like sometimes that message could come off kind of like if you're a Christian, then you shouldn't be struggling with mental health. If you're a Christian, why are you feeling sad? Why are you angry? Why are you depressed? Right? So I just want to ask you guys, why do you think mental health isn't really talked about in church, like especially in the Hmong churches?
I think it starts off basically like from the start of Hmong people, like especially I think it goes back to like the war as well, like all of our parents or most of our parents and grandparents have gone through really traumatic events that, they didn't really have time for, like mental issues or mental health issues. And so I think especially like as the newer generations come today, we're able to like have that time to like know that this isn't right. And so I think it's really with the generational gaps that really like clash with each other. And so that's why most of the older generations think that mental health is like not really a serious issue.
Yeah, I do agree with Glo. I feel like with the trauma that they bared with coming over here, they didn't really get to have the chance to fully relieve it, and so the trauma is still being like built up, and with that it not only impacts the youth because it's like generational trauma, but I think it's not very much said in the church or especially in Hmong churches because it's like what Glo said, where with them coming over and them not receiving the like help that they needed, they didn't really think mental health issues were like a problem. And so going back to the youth and just the church in general, I feel like they don't think it's too important because they didn't really deal with all of that. And so they probably just think of it as something that this new generation is just saying or I'm bringing up.
I would also like to say that I feel like it's also a topic that I agree where not a lot of people talk about because I think they're scared of bringing up that topic, right? Like how you guys were saying, we're not our parents. Like I could say, like even like with my own parents, because like a lot of us have like first generation parents, right? Or and they struggle with bringing up that topic of like mental health because it could be something that they don't understand, because like how you guys said, they grew up in a place where they had to grow up fast, right? They had to be adults, be like, it's almost like their childhood was kind of like shortened. And I think there is a lot of fear when it comes to talking about mental health, because I feel like not everyone knows how to approach that topic, right? Because I feel like it's, to some people, it's a sensitive topic, or it's a topic where people aren't sure of. And it does affect our younger generation, because we kind of grew up thinking like, oh, I shouldn't talk about how I feel because it's just going to burden like my parents. It's just going to burden whoever, like the church leaders, or, you know, like nobody's going to understand, or something like that. And, but I think something that you guys brought up was like trauma, right? And I think that's the bit, like a thing about it too. It's like, what if we just don't know that like a lot of our mental health, or when it comes to church, it comes from like traumas that has happened to us like in the past, and it's just that we don't know how to deal with it, and it becomes when it hits us, right? So I think all of us can relate that we all have some kind of like trauma, right? So how does unprocessed trauma show up in the Hmong youth?
Keon, you wanna take a go?
Yeah, I can. I think unprocessed trauma appearing in the youth is not. It's very it's very little. You don't really see it, because I feel like most of the time you don't. Most of the time the youth doesn't really. I like to say that it's not that they're not showing the true colors. It's just that like most of the time you don't really see that part of them, and that like that aspect of trauma that they might have. They don't really show it, just because, you know, it's I feel like church is a place where we, you know, in a sense, it's a place where it's really comforting enough to the point where they don't have to kind of show their like built up trauma. And so we don't really see that type of stuff. And even if they do have like some trauma that they do have, most of the time they wouldn't feel I wouldn't say feel the need to or like feel the respect to share, because it's not like that. It's just like I feel like they wouldn't want to share, just because it's something that they wouldn't want to talk about, and because it's a very touchy subject that they just don't really want, like what I said, don't really want to talk about. Because going back to, you know, myself, because I was, you know, I am still a youth, and like back then I didn't want to like talk about my own problems like that either. So just like in a way it's kind of relating back to me, and I feel like with how I grew up and with how I like processed my trauma and like interacted with everyone in the youth, it didn't really show that I was bearing trauma. So it's kind of like that.
What was your question again?
Oh, my question, it was just like, how does unprocessed trauma show up in like the Hmong youth?
Oh, okay. So I think unprocessed trauma is definitely, I think there's a lot of different answers to this, but the route I want to go is that it will pass on you know, to your future generations. And then also, it shows in the youth. I would like to agree is that, you know, sometimes it doesn't really show often, right? Like no one really wants to talk about it, and maybe it's because sometimes people aren't ready for it, but it really shows like, or it will continue, right? Your unprocessed trauma will continue, and it will get worse, and as like it will get worse as well, because I know that there are some youth with some unprocessed trauma, and I feel like it has caused division, or it has like really distanced or strayed apart from their other friendships, right? Because I feel like at church, you know, it's like what Keon said, it is supposed to be a safe place, but sometimes not everybody wants to open up, and then like other people, I forgot where I heard this from, but I heard that assumptions are always bad. So like people will assume like, you don't want to open up to me, is it because you don't trust me enough? Like I thought we're supposed to be like, you know, brothers and sisters in Christ who help each other, you know. And it's sad to say, but it will happen, you know, like bad assumptions will happen. So I think it will further cause a hole in the unprocessed trauma, and then that's where Satan can come in and, you know, make it like even worse than before. Like the hole will become bigger, you know.
I agree. I think trauma is like unprocessed trauma is like harmful, because it isn't talked about, right? Nobody wants to admit to trauma, and maybe you experience something that you don't know that caused you to be traumatized. I'm gonna be for real. I think I kind of lean towards that like area of like trauma, where I feel like things happen, but I don't process it as trauma. But then like when it like something occurs and like I'm angry, or I'm like sad, or like I'm scared or anxious, like then I'm like, wait, like I have to take a step back and be like, maybe like I'm like this because something happened like in the past. So yeah, I agree. And I also think in church, we're also kind of like moving on, right? In church, like we're taught about sin, right? And how to recognize it. And so with sin, right, when we talk about sin, there's kind of like, there's a clear like answer, right? The Bible talks, this is sin. We all know what sin is. But when it comes to like mental health, there's not really that's like taught to us. Like, I feel like that's where that line gets blurry. So I want to ask you guys too is, how do you think mental health gets confused with sin in a faith space? So like church.
Definitely. I think it gets confusing to many, because we're supposed to have that faith that God will heal us, right? But not a lot of people understand is that it's hard. You know, it is hard. It's not a sin to have mental health issues, right? You know, we will all like go through it, but I think what most people don't understand is that it's what you do with your mental health, you know, like what if you are not in the right like mindset right now, and you don't run to God, but instead you might run to substance abuse or like other things that that can actually really damage your body, then that's where it becomes a sin. But I feel like most people kind of don't understand that, because I feel like a lot of like the older generations today, they just kind of see everything as like, or the mental health thing as bad, because they know that that's where it's going to lead up to. But I think most or older generations have to understand is that it's not like a sin to have mental health issues, but rather it's a sin of what you do with it. You know, it's kind of like that one verse where it says like, you can be angry, but don't like sin in your anger.
Yeah, I do agree. I feel like with the older generation, they most of the time they don't think of like a as an issue, because in a sense they kind of already are sinning, because you know, in our Hmong culture, I feel like drinking is so much so like
Normalized,
such a yeah. So it's like like second nature to them, you know. And at every parties, it's, you know, everyone's kind of drinking. And I mean, it is. I think it's just like how the world is nowadays, where everything is kind of getting normalized. And so like just going back, just going based off of that, I feel like to the root of everything, like the mental health issues and the trauma that we may have, they old generations probably don't think of it as as a problem, because they, and what they did with whatever they were going through, they had went back to, I guess, sinning, because going back to drinking, because it eventually leads to that, where if they are feeling depressed or sad, a few drinks won't help, or like, oh, going to a party wouldn't
Wouldn't kill you.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
So I feel like just going back to that, it's like, yeah. Sorry.
So I think it does get like confusing, right? Like mental health and sin, right? Because it goes back to what we were saying, where it's not talked about a lot in church, right? So like how you guys were saying, I feel like with the older generation, like when they hear mental health, they think, like how you were saying, bad, right? And then in their minds, bad is equal to sin. So I think that's where like a lot of the younger youth, right, they don't really speak or feel comfortable talking about their own mental health, because it might comes off as like, oh, I'm a sinful person, but in reality, we're all sinful people. That's why we come to Christ. But I think another, just to kind of a question to continue on, right, is what kind of harm does this cause for like the young people who are already struggling, right? Like the difference between like mental health and sin, right? What would you guys think? Like, what kind of harm does that cause for someone who's already like struggling with like their own like mental health?
I think the harm that it can cause would help, would basically lead them to sin even more. Like, if they're like feeling depressed, and if all around them is how if all around them is like parties and drinking, then it would just kind of influence that, and like they're just gonna dive into it deeper and fall away deeper. And I feel like, with going back to our, like, the old generation and our families, I feel like since they haven't really processed it, and it's not really talked about with them, and so it won't be talked about with us, because we haven't gone to the root of the cause. And with that, then everything is still going to like have trauma, and everyone is still going to have like health issues or mental health issues. I'm sorry. And like, that harm that I can do is lead them to keep on sinning, because with all the parties and all the drinking, and even with the smoking, and like all the other like substance abuse that like is out there right now and available to it, not only like them but to everyone else, like I feel like with whatever mental health issue that they may have, it can just lead to another thing of having another mental health issue, or could just lead them astray to like sinning again.
It's kind of like what was said earlier, but definitely, like, if it goes unresolved, then it's definitely going to continue the generational trauma, right? It's gonna keep passing until until it gets solved. But definitely, I think it causes like misunderstandings, right? And sometimes those misunderstandings go way too deep, that sometimes it's like your mindset is not in the right place, as in like kind of like your relationship with God will definitely be like strained, and you're gonna like, I feel like you might, like, a lot of people will blame God. They'll be like, like, I went through this, but you weren't there. The people of the church weren't there, right? And then that's where a lot of people say, like, the church has hurt me. But definitely, I think another thing is that their sin with that their mental health cause will definitely become normalized. So like that's where I say again, like, you know, drinking, or where Keon said drinking, like that's why it's so normalized, because it has been passed down the generations, and that's how they solve their, you know, unresolved trauma. But that's not the way to go, but that's just what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you guys. I think for me, it definitely goes back to, like, for those who are struggling with mental health already, right? And hearing, like, that, oh, if you have mental health, you're just, like, sinning. I feel like that does push them definitely further away from God, right? If I heard that, I would not want to, like, go to church, or I don't want to have a relationship with Christ, because I think to myself, well, all the people who, you know, go to church, they look at me like, you know, I'm a sinner.
Yeah, I'm dirty,
right?
you know, like,
I'm like what I have is incurable, right? Like, God can't fix me. And so I feel like it definitely pushes people away from God. And I think that is one of the harms it comes with, you know, like mental health in church, right? I want to bring up this illustration, I think it is, because there was a pastor, right, that once said, I have it here. So it says, our hearts are like a trash can. Before coming to Christ, it gets filled with hurt, trauma, resentment, unforgiveness, and just basic life stuff. Some people, right, they come to Christ, they empty the trash, and then they let God clean it out, and then they close the lid. But there's others who don't know how to, right? They don't know how to clean out the trash. So they just close the lid. So from the outside, everything looks clean and looks fine. But on the inside, like the trash that still sits there, it eventually starts to like rot. It starts to smell and stuff. So what do you guys kind of think about this analogy? Like, do you think people are pressured to look healed before they actually are? Or and also, like, following up question is, doesn't God have the power to already heal even if the lid is closed?
Okay, so definitely I feel like my past self, especially in middle school and early high school, I always felt that I always had to be happy, even though I felt really like depressed. I feel like, I don't know, like maybe I just grew up where, like, you know, kind of like the older generations where like mental health is bad, and if you like, where's your faith, you know? And so I always felt that I always had to constantly be happy, right? But, you know, definitely God can do everything. God can do the impossible. Even if your trash can lid is closed, you know, God can just, you know, clean it from the inside. You know, God can do anything, in my opinion. But I think it depends on a lot of like families, because every family is different. But I think sometimes, at least for me, I would undermine my mental health, because, you know, I know that my mom, especially, and my family, they have been through like worse, in my opinion. And so like I felt like, you know, maybe I didn't have like the right to feel this way. But definitely when I got older, I understood was that everyone has to go through something for them to learn. And I definitely, you know, of course God can heal you, right? But if you don't want to be healed, then what can you do? But also another thing I want to say is that God will put you through these certain tribulations so that you may be able to grow, right? And you may be able to help others from that. So definitely for me, you know, I can relate to that illustration and like an analogy. Yeah. And I just want to say is that it is hurtful, and it can be really rough in that patch, but things will get better, you know? And I feel like when I heard that in that time, like I didn't want to listen, like, you know, it doesn't feel better right now. But then once I got through that rough patch, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess things did get better. So, but I think something that we have to really remember is that we have to be hopeful. You know, we have to, I know that it doesn't mean that your faith is bad, right? Of course, like everyone doubts, right? But the thing that I have to say is that you have to continue hoping that God will redeem you and God will save you, right? Because I know that God will, and even if I didn't feel like that right now, for some reason I just kept going. So I like, just to bring it back, like even if my lid is closed, God will do the unimaginable, unimaginable, whatever. I can't say it, but so.
I do agree with Glow, but sorry, you go back to the first question again?
Oh, the first question was, what do you think about this? Oh, okay, the one before. Do you think people are pressured to look healed before they actually are?
Yes, I feel like it's very normalized in this day and age. I feel like everyone's always trying to like show that they are this type of person on the surface, even though they are being burdened with like a bunch of built up emotions or like trauma that they have. And even if they have unresolved trauma, they are told by society to look a certain part, to act a certain part, and which is why everyone either tries to chummy up to like other people, or everyone becomes a people pleaser. I feel like it's just very normalized nowadays. And like going back to Glow, I said I agree with her because I feel like, or agree with her too for the second question, because if you allow God to move in you, I feel like even if your lid is closed, he'll work miracles with you, and he will make you he will polish the unpolished that is inside of you, and the rot and the dirt that you may feel like you might have, as long as you allow God to move in you and to not make you how would I say this, basically washing away your sins. And in that sense, I feel like people can kind of view it or take it as a give and take. And not only that, but like two different views as well. Like some people may think of it as, if I don't get baptized, then I'm not I'm not really do I really belong, and not only that, but like if I don't allow him in my life, then am I really saved? And it's only through the process of you trying to let him in that, and you can open that lid for him to or even if your lid is closed, but with that process, it's like that little space that is in the closed lid. I feel like he will make it work.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I think a lot of times people are pressured to have like this perfect image, right? But underneath it all, like, it's just like the analogy, there is like still rotting food, like, and I feel like believers, I feel like they think in order to come before God, or in order to even have a relationship with Christ, like they have to be perfect, right? And I think that's like, I know, hey, that's the total opposite, right? That God doesn't call the perfect, right? God calls the imperfect, the sinners, right? Jesus sat with the sinner, he ate with the sinners, right? And if for people who are struggling with like mental health, right, like I feel like that shouldn't make you feel like you're dirty, right? It shouldn't make you feel like you aren't able to go before God and talk, have a relationship with Christ, because it's just like how you both were saying, where God can work miracles. He can do the impossible, right? We just have to allow Christ into our lives, right? And moving forward, right, with our topic and how we were sharing here. So what in some ways, or practical ways, can the church better support young people who are struggling with mental health? What do you guys think, like as a church, as a like fellow brothers and sisters in Christ? What can we do to help support those who are struggling?
I think what we can do is, I would like to say that provide a safe space for everyone to just come and talk, but at the same time, I feel like it's harder, easier said than done, because it goes back to, if we want to, tell, our trauma and our,
Like be open.
be open about it, because I feel like, in that sense, I feel like people may say that they are open, but then again, they might not share the full story. And no, like, shade on that, because everyone deals with it differently, and everyone has their different traumas and mental health issues. But I feel like to get to the bottom of everything, I feel like we just have to be more proactive in being more welcoming, I guess, because I feel like being more proactive with welcoming and just interacting with others, then eventually, they will, everyone will warm up with each other and will be close enough to the point where they feel like, okay, I feel safe enough to convey my like emotions. And I mean, it's not to say that like that church is like bad and that we can't do that. It's just that it's really hard to help someone when in a sense they feel they see you as like a stranger, in a sense. And I mean, it's kind of like you only see that person on Sunday, but if we keep on proactively seeking a relationship with that person, and eventually it'll be more than just a friendship, but like family, in a sense. And I feel like that's what we are striving for, but it is also very hard too, because it takes time, and we just have to be patient and wait for it.
Yeah, I would agree with Kian, is that definitely we really do have to work on connection, because then that is what essentially will bring people to open up, right? Even though it does take a while, we do have to understand is that this is not something that can be fixed quickly, right? Or like swept under the rug. There are multiple layers that will be, revealed, right? But also it does go that we cannot lean on our own understanding, but we have to rely on God's timing and rely on God's understanding, right? And we have to understand that this is for the better, right? God has something for us and like all of us to better each other, right? Even if this specific youth may not open up to you, they can open up to another person, right? And then that's where we all help each other. Something that we have to understand is that this is not a competition, right, of who can save who, right? It's not us, but it is God who will save everyone, right? But God is using us, And so definitely, I think though, we do have to definitely pray, and we do have to have patience, right? Because I mean, obviously back then, I would feel a little bit upset if this youth did not open up to me. But then now I understand is that, it was better, right? Because maybe I didn't understand what they were going through. Like, of course, I want to be there for everyone, right? I'm pretty sure everyone wants to do that. But sometimes, maybe it's just not meant to be, right? God has something better for me. God has something better for them. And honestly, I think it just really goes back to just understanding God's plan, right? Or not waiting, but just trust in his timing, right? But definitely another thing I want to add is that sometimes if parents or older generations cannot provide that safe space, then it really does have to start in the youth. I like to say is that our youth coordinators and sponsors have really great spiritual mentality, and they do understand the harm in mental health, right? As in like where it can lead to, but they provide that safe space that it's okay, you're not you're not a sinner if you have mental health. You know, of course you are dirty, but we are all dirty, right? And I feel like because of that, you know, a lot of youth have opened up, at least in our church, you know. And so I think it really does have to start with like the youth as well, for us to really have that strong connection and for us to grow with each other through Christ.
I agree with both of you guys. I think it does start with the youth, especially like moving forward, right, and a new generation. But so I think it does start with like leaders in the church, to be open to talking just about mental health, and like how you guys were saying, making that safe space for everyone who do struggle with it to be able to feel comfortable and just to come. But I think one thing that you did mention was like when you're talking about like God, right? And when you're talking that, it reminded me like about like faith, right? And how faith, it does play like a big part in like healing. And sometimes it could be used in a way that makes people feel worse, because it's like it goes back to like that, the sin or like mental health, like what's the difference? So how does, I just want to ask you guys this, so how does faith actually help mental health when it's practiced in a healthy way? Do you think, or another question is, do you think faith plays a part in like helping in mental health?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said earlier, it's testing your faith, you know, and so then it builds your character. You go through tribulations, and then I feel like people might think like, why is God testing me, you know, if he loves me and all that stuff? But you really have to understand is that this is just building your character, you know, that this will eventually help you one day to help other youths as well. But I definitely, just speaking from experience, when it's practiced in a good way, when I am going through a hard patch, sometimes it's crazy because back then I used to like have a lot of suicidal thoughts. But now, right, when I do get one, or I'm just kind of like, why am I feeling this way? You know, like it's kind of weird. I don't know how to explain it, but now it's just like, it's kind of gone. And I feel like it's definitely because my faith has been tested, and like, I have a lot of endurance now, right? Even though back then I didn't understand it and I would question it and be really frustrated and upset, right? I just like to say is that there is so much growth and potential in that faith, that when you are in a spot now that you understand what God put you through, it's kind of like, I kind of want to say you're like untouchable, because I don't know, I feel like that's how I feel. I mean, of course, you know, when you're this strong, Satan will attack you, but when you have that set foundation and faith into Christ, that he will not fail you and that he will not leave you, then you're just kind of like, you stand up differently, like you walk differently, you know. So definitely faith does help in the healing process, and when it is practiced in a good way, then it really does make a difference. So
Yeah, I do agree with Gloria, and I feel like and with that, with having faith and having like God centered around your with everything, it's kind of like wearing the armor of God, the armor, and it's like, you know, it's kind of like what Glo said. It's kind of like you're untouchable, and in a sense, you definitely will have a lot more spiritual attacks, because in a way you're, you know, I feel like you're like on fire, you know, for God, and you know, the enemy doesn't want you to be like that, and so you will definitely have a lot more spiritual attacks. But you know, with having faith and you know, making sure that, you know, your faith is rooted, and that you know, rely on God, and that you're going back to not only God, but I would like to say your brothers and sisters in Christ, because going back to, you know, your brothers and sisters, it not only impacts you positively, but like also helps motivate and positively impact like them as well, because it not only motivates them but motivates you, and it's kind of like a never ending like fire that if someone's fire is kind of like dim, you can kind of light them up, and then it just continuously keeps on lighting up, and everyone just keeps on it's kind of like the domino effect where everyone just keeps on keep on
Building each other,
yeah.
encouraging, yeah.
So I just want to share a verse too, and it's from Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. It says, "Above all else, guard your hearts, for everything you do flows from it." Right? And I think our hearts, right, it shapes how we think, how we act, and how we kind of just live our lives. But we can't guard our hearts if we're already it's already full of like unhealed pain. So sometimes guarding our hearts doesn't mean like pretending we're okay. I think it means like dealing with what you carry, right? Like what's already pain in your heart. Like it says guard your hearts, right? So it's like whatever that's in your heart already that you're struggling with, guard your heart from that, releasing it or like finding healing with whatever trauma that you guys have that you hold in your hearts. But like just a last question for you guys is, what do you guys think guarding your heart means to you?
I feel like guarding my heart means building up walls so people can't eventually come in and see. And with that, it's a bit tricky because I feel like most of the time or most days now, everyone kind of does that, where if they have gotten hurt, then it's like they tend to just not trust people easily. And not only that, but people tend to build up their walls so high that no one can come. And with that, it kind of blocks God out as well, because then once they start blocking everyone else, they start blocking God as well. And like building up walls, it's very hard to allow people to just come in, and it's not healthy, and it's very harmful for you in the long run, because then you're just constantly thinking of, oh, is this person gonna do this to me, or is it okay if to allow this person in my life? And it's just very I forgot the word, but it's very bad on your health, because it would just make you self-conscious about everything.
Yeah, I would agree. I am looking at it in both worldly context and biblical context. So for worldly, it's like, you guard your heart so that from past trauma, it doesn't hurt you anymore. And since you know that past trauma, if you see a similar like trauma event coming, then like, I need to back away from this. But definitely I do agree with Kiana that sometimes it can be bad, because then it's like it's not to say like, oh, like I don't want to be in pain again. It's like definitely guard your heart in that. But what can be harmful is that you may not see like the intention of it, and sometimes you don't know if it's going to be good or bad. And it's kind of like a mechanism where I think a lot of people go into, where it's like they don't want to try new things, or they don't want to like just do something that will hurt them, and it's nothing bad to say, like I have felt that way too. But now I have to like, I kind of like don't want to say I have an open mind, but it's just more of like, I don't want to say it's just kind of like I don't know how to explain it, but basically I just kind of see like what it like, this might be helpful and this might not be helpful. I don't know if that makes sense.
Like,
but
see it what it is.
yeah, like to see what it is, and if it does hurt me, then I just see it as a tribulation, and this has helped me become a better person. And then in biblical context, I like to think that it's just guard your heart, as in like whatever is hindering or your faith, then you have to like stand strong. You have to be like, this is not good for me. Like if I go back to like any kind of sin, then that's when you have to guard your heart and be like, this is not good for my mental health. But
yeah, I want to go off of what Glo said for biblically aspect, because I feel like in a sense it's I don't really think it's really sad, because knowing that we're like Hmong Christians, being in a Hmong household, I feel like we're really prone to do sinful things, like just go out and partying, or things like that. And I feel like guarding your heart, it kind of goes back to, when you're out there, and because you're prone to be out there, if it's like family parties and stuff, and they offer you to do things, and it's like, guarding your heart is, am I gonna allow myself to do do this, or I'm gonna tell myself that, and since I am a Christian, and that I'm not going to do like any substance abuse, am I gonna give in, or am I gonna stay rooted and stay stay true, and stay faithful to God?
Yeah, I like your guys' answer. I think it comes down to like just like guarding your heart. It's like having discernment, right? Knowing what your decisions could lead you to. But I just want to say, to end this, thank you everyone for for the both of you guys too as well, to just be able to share and be real today, right? Also, I want to say thank you to all the viewers out there, especially in this conversation that we have. I know it was a little on the heavier side, but it also does hit home for a lot of people. So I just want to say thank you to all of you guys as well. Just to remind you guys too, is that you guys are not weak for the things that you guys struggle with. We're not perfect, but that's why we come to Christ. And continue to have faith, and you're not different from anyone else, right? And the enemy is gonna try to like attack you, but that's why we continue to stay strong. But again, this has been the 99 Podcast. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and go ahead and share the videos as well. Follow us on our Instagram. It's the 99 underscore. No, the underscore 99 on Instagram. We also have our Facebook page too. Follow us there as well. Again, this has been the 99 Podcast. Hope you guys have a nice day.
Bye. So much love for you guys.